And that song had a good word. Really, really good word. When things are out of control, you can be still and know that He's God. And, this world, we talk about the craziness of the world often. But we do know that there have been airstrikes in Syria, right? Amidst a civil war that's going on. And anytime that sort of thing happens, in response to a chemical attack. So right now what I want to do is just, lift up a prayer. We can just pray over what's happening there. None of us really know because we're not there. But let's just pray right now over that situation. God, we just right now think about what's happening on that side of the world. And we just say words that said, in the midst of things that are out of our control, we can be still and know that you're God. So God, we just pray that you are present there, that you would save lives while you're there, that life will not be lost, and that in the midst of suffering and trials, God, that we can depend on you to be a good God and present. It's what we can do over here. So God, we share your heart and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, that was a prayer over Syria. I need to pray over myself because I just need prayer. Let's pray. God, I pray that today your message comes through despite being a broken vessel. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, for those of you who can't, please do me a favor. Pray also for me that whenever I open my mouth, words may be given me so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in change. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. Who can do that for me? All right. I'll take it. So this is week 2 of our series. We're talking about short stories by Jesus. So short stories by Jesus. Last week, we talked about, there was a question. You remember the question? The question was, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? He is. A neighbor is someone who meets the needs of others. We discovered in the story that Jesus taught us. Someone who meets the needs of others, that person is a neighbor. And of course, the definition of neighbor is reciprocal, right? For there to be a neighbor, you have to have a neighbor. There's not just one person alone who has a neighbor. There have to be 2 people for neighbors to actually even exist. And so, one neighbor is someone who meets the needs of others. The other neighbor is anyone in need. Right? That's what we discovered last week. So, to be a neighbor, you have to have a neighbor. And to have a neighbor, you have to be a neighbor. And the follow-up question to last week's foray into the Good Samaritan story was, remember the practical question? The practical question was, how can we eliminate hurry from our lives? Because we discovered that hurry was actually the limiting factor to helping other people. The main reason why we don't help other people is because we're too hurried. So is there a way to enter unhurried, right? To slow down and eliminate that? Well, this week we're going to look at another story, and I want to remind all of us about the guidelines for looking at these stories. First one is, right, that German phrase, Sitz im Leben, right? Situation in life. There's a context to the story. When Jesus told the story, it meant something to the people who were listening. And then, with that, what's the point? There was a point when Jesus told the story. He wanted them to get it. So before we go on bird walks and look at secondary ideas and tertiary ideas, we want to focus on the main point. So we pick up with Jesus, still in Luke. We talked in Luke chapter 10. Now we're in Luke chapter 12. And we pick up with him. He's teaching the crowd. Here's what it says. Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Hang on. All right, we'll just stop right there at that verse. What is going on here? If you've ever supervised children, you know what this is. You might even be able to hear the tone. Can you hear the tone? Right? If you've ever supervised children, if you're a parent, Can you hear the tone of this person asking? I imagine this is a grown adult, but I hear a child's tone when I read this. Because it's not a question. It's not even a request, right? This is like a command. Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. I don't know, just me? Maybe it's just me. Have you read this text before? This is a profoundly important verse for what follows, right? But we can't miss this verse right here. This is actually setting the stage for what happens next. Instead of placing ourselves at his feet, at Jesus' feet, ready to do his bidding, allowing him to have his way in our life, a lot of times we seek to command him or control him. Have you caught yourself doing that with God? God, I need this. God, this is what needs to happen right now for everything to work out. This isn't a request. How would it be a request? Teacher, can you step in? Can you do something about my situation? That's a request. That's a question. This is not. What this person is doing is what we all too often do. We try to force God, don't we? God, do this. This is the only way I can see it working in my mind. But can't you imagine that God's ideas are bigger than mine? Bigger than yours? Maybe he's got something else planned. Have you asked him? God, if you could just help me with this, that would be great. Thanks. The young man talking to him has this whole idea in his head. It's like a vision board. Now, I'm not knocking vision boards. Many of you probably have vision boards, right? God, this is what I want. This is the house I'm going to live in. This is the car I'm going to drive. These are the dogs I'm going to have. You go down the list and you knock it out. This is what I want my life to look like. Now, I'm not saying don't have a vision board, but I am saying know who you are and know who he is. Right? Know who you are and know who he is. Know who the master in this relationship is. Just one verse. We're just one verse in, and there's a lot going on. Luke chapter 12, verse 14, Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Again, a fantastic verse, because I read, man, the exasperation of Jesus. It's not in there, but I just like reading it that way. Man, don't you understand what's happening? Because he knows that this man doesn't desire an arbiter. He doesn't desire someone to figure out how to work this out with his brother. He wants his brother to pay up. Right? He has the solution in his head already. He has it worked out, and Jesus, help me make it happen. I know you can help me make it happen, so please. Jesus knows what's going on here. He diagnoses it quickly, and it's quite complex, right? What's happening in this dynamic. So you'll see, as evidenced by the story that Jesus chooses to tell, there are a lot of clues in his story. It's a weird way to answer this request. It's not even a request. It's a command. What are you going to do? Who are you commanding Jesus? This is crazy. Luke chapter 12, verse 15. Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." It's kind of weird. It's kind of a non sequitur, but he understood what this guy was about. It's like, all right, I know you're talking about inheritance, but I see exactly what this is. Guard against greed. Now, is this true what Jesus says? That life does not consist in an abundance of possessions? Is that true? So we're going to get ready, okay? We have to prepare ourselves for some profound Jesus teaching on possessions. Because possessions are a significant part of life, right? They are. You own your clothes. I hope you own your clothes. The clothes you're wearing. I hope they're yours. Right? Someone owns a car that brought you here, right? Someone owns a house that you live in. Possessions are part of life. But a lot of times what we do as people is we'll divide between the haves and the have-nots. And what Jesus wants to do here is change the way we think about possessions. So the question is, how should we think about possessions? How should we think about them? The things that I have, the things that are mine. Because really that's the question, right? The root of what's happening here. Jesus, I want what's mine. Talk to my brother. If you have a sibling, you know what this is. Yeah, talk to my brother. Work this out, because I want what's mine. Okay, so what role do possessions play in my life? A lot of times possessions can dominate our thinking if we're not careful. Right, we'll think about that. And that's why Jesus said, watch out. Verse 16, and he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And what would you do? I've got no place. I've got so much. It's crazy. Well, here's what he did. Verse 18. This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. Right? Okay, all right, that makes sense, I guess. Instead of just building a new barn, right? Maybe he had real estate issues, right? He couldn't really expand, build a new building. So, okay, well, let's tear those down, build new ones, whatever. Verse 19, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Excuse me. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. All right? So he's got this whole plan. We got this worked out. I've got all this extra grain, right? Got my retirement planned out. I will eat, drink, and I will be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. Yikes. That's crazy. This is the story Jesus tells. I want my inheritance. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, he was very rich, right? And he had all of these crops. He had all these plans. Retirement was going to be great, and then he died. How about that? A weird story. There are a lot of lessons to be learned, but remember, Jesus had a main point. There's a reason why he told this story. Remember, he heard a question, he diagnosed the true issue, and then he told this story. So what was Jesus addressing? What was he actually talking about? Do you remember the initial question? Right? Divide up this inheritance between my brother? But you're right. You're correct. It wasn't a question. It was a command. Man, that's why Jesus said, man. Look at this, verse 13. Tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Now, the person saying this felt personal injustice over his situation. It wasn't fair. Have you ever been in a situation where it wasn't fair? It wasn't fair. Maybe you're currently in a situation where it's not fair. This is kind of a human emotion, experiencing injustice. And then here comes big Jesus, right, coming through, and the story tells us he's healing people, he's casting out demons, he's teaching with authority, and Scripture says it's authority like they've never experienced before. So they know that Jesus, so when this person in the crowd says something, he knows Jesus can do something about it, right, because he can. That's what Jesus does. He does things about it. He heals people. He makes situations right. There's an injustice, I'm experiencing it. Jesus, you can help. After all, I'm the one being wronged here in this situation. And maybe so. Maybe he was being wronged. Maybe you're being wronged in your situation. Maybe from a legal, familial standpoint, I mean, you know how tricky families can be. I'll just leave that there. But from a familial standpoint, maybe the person was in the right. But his issue was deeper than simply inheritance between siblings. Because Jesus could have said, all right, let's make it right. I know as a human, as a person, as a man, I'd say, yeah, absolutely, let's make it right. This is wrong, let's correct it. But Jesus saw through that. He actually saw the real issue. I mean, if I put on the blinders and I look at it now, from my perspective, I wouldn't even see the issue. But Jesus knew, just by that brief interaction with this person, he knew exactly what was going on. In his book, Through Peasants' Eyes, Kenneth Bailey says this. He says, a self-centered cry for justice is a symptom of a deeper sickness. I think I need to read that one more time. A self-centered cry for justice is a symptom of a deeper sickness. We all want justice. And the truth is, we all want judgment. If we understand that judgment is justice, it's God making things right? We want justice. We want things to be set right. But when it's self-centered, there's something deeper going on. It's a symptom of a deeper sickness. It's rooted in selfishness, and it's rooted in what Jesus mentioned, greed. That's really what was going on here. The man asking him for the inheritance was greedy. That's why Jesus addressed it. That's why he talked about greed. Perhaps it's justified, however. See, because motive is really difficult to discern, right? I don't know what's going on inside you. I have no idea. Jesus knew, though. He knew when he was talking with this guy just briefly, he knew exactly what was going on in his heart. And he could discern right away. So don't get me wrong. We still long for and we struggle toward justice. And we should. We should live our lives in that direction. But I'm talking about a self-centered justice that's rooted in something deeper and insidious, like greed. Self-examination is crucial in any pursuit of justice. As we step, it's crucial that we look at ourselves and our motives, that we're honest with ourselves. And sometimes that's the toughest thing to be, honest with yourself. Why am I doing this? What's really behind this? What is it that I want? If this young man asked himself, what is it that I want? He might have been scared to see what he would find. See, you thought it was just about money, right? Inheritance. Money's related, but it's about motives. It's about heart issues. Jesus was so good at just slicing straight to the heart and figuring out exactly what was going on. Jesus sees his heart quickly, and he recognizes greed as the issue. Verse 15, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Now, Jesus, when he taught, right, he was going around the countryside teaching. It was mainly to poor peasants. That's mainly who was hearing him talk. Greed can affect anyone, rich or poor. A lot of times we just associate it with rich people. Rich people are greedy. It's really easy for us to say, right? Those of us who, are lacking lots of money. They're so greedy. But greed can affect absolutely anyone, rich or poor, because greed is hoarding. It's the spirit of hoarding beyond the point of necessity. That's really what it is. It's hoarding far beyond the point of necessity, and you don't have to be rich to engage in it. You could be poor, and you could be very greedy. Greed is a perception and perspective problem. And that's why Jesus reframes everything here. It's not about this inheritance thing. It's about greed. Life doesn't consist in an abundance of possessions. Have you seen this bumper sticker? Anyone ever? Have you seen this? Right, rolling around, right? You're rolling around 95. Hey, check out this guy. Big truck. Oh, yeah, he who dies with the most toys wins. He who dies with the most toys. How childish can you get? I'm just going to say it. This is very childish, this idea of he who dies with the most toys wins. That's how children think. That's how I thought when I was a kid. How can I get more? I'm like pure id. I'm like, I just want more toys. And we turn it into a bumper sticker, and we put it on our cars, and we say, hey, check it out. Got the new
whatever, right? And it goes with the new, look how they hook together, it's awesome. Toys, again, don't get me wrong, toys are fun. Absolutely, right? You grow up, toys get better. You're like, hey, toys. But toys have nothing to do with the abundant life that Jesus promised, right? Jesus said, I came that you might have life to the full. It has nothing to do with toys. Toys are still fun, but that's not what life is about. So I prefer this bumper sticker. You understand, I grew up kind of in the pre-emo phase, 90s, we were sad all the time. Who dies with the most toys? Still dies. You would know, if you saw the music I listened to back then, you would get it. You'd totally understand. It's funny, even the concept of possessions are up for grabs now. The idea of owning things, you know that's changing, that's shifting right now. We have millennials to thank for that. Millennials in the house, around. You're very reluctant to identify yourself, I get it. Millennials have recognized the fallacy of working to have more stuff. They've recognized that. They've changed the workplace. Do you understand that? Many of you work with millennials. You don't get them. You're like, wait a second, are you serious right now? What is this about? You're not going to kill yourself for the company? Nah, man, I just want to do something that I believe in. You know what I'm talking about. They're the largest age group in the workforce right now, the largest demographic. And they are causing serious disruption because the old way of doing things are different. They want to do something with purpose. It's what they're about. And they recognize it's not just about getting stuff. And even the concept of owning things. I'm living with 5 of my friends. It's not a big deal. We're just we don't really have I don't own a car, right? And they don't own a car, and we just kind of share it. And seriously, this is a significant thing. They don't have those values. If you consider the sharing economy right now and what's happening in the sharing economy, you understand Paris just sued Airbnb, right? Because they're like, oh, you're messing up our hotel economy. But it's changing everything. Airbnb, right? A lot of us use that. Why? Because it's cheap. It's great. Right? Or Zipcar. If you live in a city, you probably don't. There's some people here who probably live in the city, and it's like, hey, you know what? Easier to have a Zipcar. I don't have to pay maintenance, whatever. I'll pay for it when I use it. That makes sense. Uber, right? Disrupting the whole taxi situation. The way we think about possessions is different now. We don't think of it in those terms. Some of you might use, right, Apple Music or Google Music. And the idea is, well, I don't really own this song, but kind of. I'm paying to be able to have access to it. It's weird. Our concept of ownership is different now. I don't need to own it if I can have access to it. And they're helping to change all of that. The reason why that's important is because generations coming up recognize that the fulfillment in life, it can't be found in possessions. They get that. They understand it intuitively. Verse 15. See, that's exactly what Jesus said. Do you see that? Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. It's ancient wisdom, and these kids are getting it. They're getting a bunch of other stuff too, but But look at this, verse 16. And then he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. This is crucial to the story Jesus is telling this man about greed. Right? This guy has greed in his heart, and Jesus says this. Why? It's weird. Look at how he phrases it. It's really weird. The ground yielded the harvest. Did you catch that? The harvest had nothing to do with the man. Absolutely nothing. He had this abundant harvest, and it was because of the ground. It wasn't because this man was great, right? It wasn't because he was rich. He happened to be rich. But it was because of the ground, and that's how Jesus said it. Why? There's an implication that Jesus is making about possessions here. He's saying that material possessions are a gift from God. Period. Full stop. Material possessions are a gift from God. That's it. All material possessions are a gift from God. Everything you think you own, it is a gift from God. Period. You might, push against this right now. You might, wait a second, Jason. I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but I've worked hard. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. And we prize, in this country, I don't know if you're familiar, Jason, but we prize rugged individualism here in this country. But I'm telling you right now, our citizenship, right, Philippians 3:20, our citizenship is in heaven. That's why we come to church. We come to church to get perspective on how life really is. That's why we're here, right? So we can remind ourselves, wait a second, what's really going on? Everything you have, right? Because think about it. If you're honest, you've had help. How? Who gave you your mind? Who gave you your mind to be able to work it out, to be able to achieve, to be able to get to where you are and where you're going? God did. That was a gift. Did he have to give you that mind? No. He gave it to you. That was the first gift, right? Who gave you your talent? Because you're so talented. God did. Go down the list. Who gave you your skill? Who put you in your position? God did. Absolutely everything you have, everything you own is his. And it's been given to you. That's how it works. Everything. And why did God do all of that? We want to get God's perspective right now, and that's why we're here. And that's why a lot of times in church, when we talk about tithe, we talk about returning it, because it was never ours to begin with. We're just giving it back to you, God. It's not really ours. We're giving it back to you. But we are stewarded with it. I'm going to show you a picture. It's a guitar. I like guitars. Big fan. Now, I have a few guitars in my life. And for what it's worth, none of the guitars in my life that I haven't played. And this is an incredible guitar right here. It's a Gretsch G6122 1962 Chet Atkins Country Gentleman reissue, walnut stain, gold pickups, gold hardware, Grover tuning nuts, Bigsby tremolo. I mean, I could tell you all about it, right? Felchertron pickups, fantastic guitar. I did not pay for it. It was a gift. It's a guitar I never could have bought in my life. It was a gift from my very first church that I worked at. They gave it to me, and my friend Stan Russell kind of orchestrated it, put it together, and there's a placard on the back. There's a plate, and I want to show you the plate on the back of the headstock. Here's what it says. So if you ever see me playing it, a lot of you have commented on it, right? Beautiful guitar. It's better than I know how to play. But the back of the headstock says this. It says, owner God, steward Jason Decena, with love, Chico SDA Church. It was a reminder that guitar's not mine, right? And every time I play it, it's just not mine. It's God's. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you the truth. I've given a few guitars away in my life. I have no problem letting people use my stuff. I have no problem if God wants to take it away, right? If he wants me to give it to someone, whatever. Why? Because he could give me something better. He could. He could. We believe it or we don't, but I believe he could. I absolutely believe that because he owns everything. The way Scripture talks about God, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, right? That's old-time talk for he owns everything. Everything is his. So if he wants to hook you up with something, he has every means to be able to do. We live in a culture where people brag about how wealthy they are. I'm really rich. I won't say any names. But as rich as you are, I know someone richer. And he's my dad. He's my father. He's your father. And by virtue of us being his kids, we have access to that. Not in like a fake way, in a very real way. We actually have access to that. That's reality. That's why we come to church. We come to church so we can be reminded that's actually how things are. That's what's up. It was a gift. Now, the ground yielded the harvest. The rich man did nothing to deserve it. But juxtapose that with what happens next. Verse 17. Right? I have no place to store my crops. Do you hear that? As if it's his. I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. As if he had anything to do with that surplus. And I'll say to myself, self, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Jesus said the ground produced the harvest. But the rich man was so self-absorbed, he was so self-focused and so selfish that he didn't recognize it or acknowledge it. He didn't recognize that it was a gift. He was like, that's, patting himself on the back for, okay. But God said to him in verse 20, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? It seems harsh that God would call him a fool. Right? God's calling him a name, you fool. But fool is a technical term. Psalm 14:1 says this, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Now, you might be thinking, well, atheists. Yeah, of course, atheists say that. There is no God. But it's not just about atheism the way we think about it. This is functional atheism. Functional atheism is someone who lives and thinks, right? He lives and thinks, he moves through life like God doesn't exist. That's what a functional atheist is. There are some Christians who are functional atheists. Oh, yeah, I believe in God. But then they live like he doesn't exist. Right? Having the form of godliness, but denying its power. That's what a functional atheist does. Also, the phrase that says his life will be demanded from him, did you catch that in the previous text? It's a legal phrase, right? For something on loan. It'll be demanded. It'll be taken again. So this is on loan to you. Now it's coming back. His life is on loan, the rich man. Our lives are on loan. That's truth. Our lives are on. Anyone here who's had a near-death experience, anyone who has driven on the Beltway, your life is on loan because something probably should have happened. But it's just like our material possessions. It's all on loan. It's a gift from God. We're stewards of our lives. So, verse 21. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. What does it mean to be rich toward God? Well, how we view and handle wealth is a spiritual barometer. That's true. So, we don't have to look any further. I've said there are a few documents in your life. You don't have to tell me anything about you, but they're moral documents. They tell me what's important to you. There are two things in life, right? Your budget and your calendar. You can say whatever you want, but if I can see your budget and your calendar, I can tell you what's important to you. That's true. And this is it. How you spend your money, it's a spiritual barometer. It's just what it is. Do we use our wealth for people other than ourselves and for interests other than our own? Are we sowing into God's kingdom with our material wealth? Remember the root issue at the very beginning? The root issue is this. We talked about greed, right? He had an issue with greed. But really, this is it. Trust. He thought money would solve his problems. That's why he wanted it. Some of us think money's going to solve our problems. And it might a little bit. I'll be real. But I'll also give you the big spoiler. It won't, ultimately. Money will not solve your problems. Because putting trust in money is a far distant, not even second or third, to trusting in God. That's why Jesus told this story. It seems out of place, but it makes perfect sense. What the fool wanted was security. And he failed to see reality as it really is. Security can only be found in God. And consider our moment and security. These are tenuous times we're living in. It's tough right now. Hacks are commonplace. You know what I'm talking about? Some of you, I'm just telling you now, some of your data might be floating out there in the cloud. Equifax was hacked last year, right? Yahoo was hacked. If you guys have anything there, it's like out there in the ether. Yeah, you didn't need that reminder, but it's true. Target was hacked, right? And recently, right, all this stuff with Cambridge Analytica, oh man, Jason, I came to church to avoid that. Right? Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, he's testifying to Congress right now. Yes, we want to guard people's data. If you're online, your stuff is out there. I'm telling you now, it's just out there. People know you're trying to keep it hidden. There's no point. It is out there, my friends. Bye-bye privacy. Where do you put your trust? Who do you trust? You trust Zuckerberg? Yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense. He's trying to help me. No. It's gone. The reason why we talk about this is I'm a dad. I'm a parent. We've got kids out there. They're going to come in here, witness a beautiful baptism. It's going to happen. And this right here is my kids' true inheritance, not money. They didn't want to hear that. They're like, Dad, you're going to leave us something, right? But this is your true inheritance, kids. This is what it is. The knowledge of where they can put their trust. That's what it is. And I can model it. I can live it right now. I can show them by trusting in God right now. This is the best way to live, guys. This is what I can give you, and it's better than money. The young man with the question had a fairness issue, a greed issue, but ultimately it was a trust issue. Jesus told him in the midst of his frustration and anxiety about the future that his trust was misplaced. You're trusting in the wrong thing. You have to trust in this. Trust in God. Trust in me. And if he trusted in God, he wouldn't need to worry. That's really what it's about. Jesus is touching our pocketbooks today, but so much more. Jesus is touching everything, and he's saying, trust me with everything.